In this video, we'll be going through how to add a drawstring backing and a felt backing to the back of your finished embroidery piece. So if you're adding a felt backing, you'll need a piece of neutral coloured felt, as big or a little bit bigger than your hoop, and 3 strands of thread in any colour. Doesn't really matter, so I'm just using the pink that I used to stitch these gum blossoms. So you'll want to make sure that you've erased any of the markings and you've ironed your piece before you get started. So to mark out the circle of felt that we'll use at the back, you'll want to trace around the outside edge of the inside or the inner ring of the hoop and cut that out. So it's best to use a heat erasable pen, as you'll be able to erase any markings that are left over at the end. So we've got a circle that's going to fit the back of our hoop perfectly, and we'll just leave that to the side for the end when we go onto our felt backing. So like I said before, you'll want to make sure that you're happy with how your piece is looking. So all markings are gone and it's all nice and ironed, because that's how it's going to stay in the hoop. So we're making sure it's sitting nice and tight in the hoop, and then we'll grab our pair of scissors and cut around the edge of the fabric, leaving 1 to 2 centimeters or 1 inch of spare fabric around the edge. Great, so the way that we're going to add our drawstring backing is by adding a running stitch through all of that spare material and pulling it tight, just like we would do with a drawstring bag. So you want to make sure you've got a nice double knot tied in the end of the thread, and all we're doing is a basic running stitch, so just bringing our needle up and back through a small amount of fabric and pulling that tight. So that's what we're going to do all the way around. So we're stabbing right in the middle of the extra fabric that we've cut, doing our running stitch and pulling it nice and tight. Great, so now that we've done one row, and if you've got some spare thread left, you might like to wind it through a little bit more from where you started. And then we're finishing off in a similar way to how we always do in embroidery. So we're holding that thread out to the left and then bringing our needle up through that loop and also up through the fabric and pulling it tight. So we'll do it one more time, holding it out to the left, bringing our fabric up through the fabric and through the middle of that loop and pulling it tight. So there you go, we've finished the drawstring backing, and if you're happy with how that's looking, you're finished now. But if you'd like to add a little bit of felt to cover the back, we'll continue on with our felt backing. And the way that we're attaching that felt is with blanket stitch. So what you might like to do, depending on how big your circle is to grab some pins or a spare needle, just to pin down the bottom of the felt so that you don't have to hold it so much when you're going at the top. So to begin our blanket stitch, what we're doing is bringing the needle under the felt and also under the material that we've just sewn in our drawstring backing, and we're pulling that tight. So we'll pop the felt back down, and then still holding that thread out of the way and a little bit to the left, we're bringing our needle down through both the felt and the fabric and coming up and making a sort of loop for our blanket stitch. So we're bringing our needle up through that loop and pulling it tight, and that's our blanket stitch. So we're holding it up to the left and out of the way, then bringing the needle through the felt and the fabric, and that's how we'll continue the whole way along for our felt backing. So now that you've finished stitching the whole way along, we're ready to finish off the thread. So what we'll do is bring our needle up through the same place that we brought it through in the first place, and then we're still finishing it off in a pretty similar way. So we're pulling it really tightly and then making a bit of a loop, bringing our needle under the last stitch that we made, and then pulling it tight and bringing our needle up through the middle. So we'll do our loop to the left, bringing our needle under the last stitch that we made, and pulling that nice and tight. So at the end, we'll just wind it through a couple of those blanket stitches, and we'll be all finished with our lovely felt backing.